Hi guys, welcome back to the Talk With. My name's Nat Rich and you are here. We're talking about money this evening, which is one of the biggest things that we all have struggled with at some point in our lives, unless we've been really, really lucky. Tonight I am joined by Remy Blumenfeld, and basically, Remy, I met you, I can't quite remember, I think it was on LinkedIn. And you
I think it was just before Christmas.
That was it. And it stood out to me, and I was having a lovely LinkedIn snoop, which is the only form of kind of social media I have. So you slip through the net, and I'm very glad that you've decided to join us today. So thank you very much. You are world-renowned coach. You've written loads of articles in Forbes. Do you want to give us a bit of a background before we jump on to Emily about what you do?
I started out running my own business in film and TV, and found that as life went on, I ended up being a coach to the people who work for me, but I didn't have any training as a coach, and they didn't necessarily want coaching. So that was an uncomfortable relationship, as you can imagine. So I went and did some training to become a coach. And then when I came back, what I discovered was that although I was now fully trained to coach people, they still didn't necessarily want to be coached. So it was much better for me to work with people who had invited me into their lives as a coach, rather than me trying to coach people who I worked with. But I think a lot of leadership is coaching, because essentially you're championing people, you're holding them accountable, whether they want to be or not. And that's what I do with my clients now, who are mostly in the creative industries, I should say. So I coach a gamut of people running their own creative businesses, these days mostly from home.
Mm-hmm, indeed. And has they found it quite difficult working from home, or the creatives loving it a little bit more than the rest of us?
Well, I think there's the same challenges that we all have, whether it's kids or dogs or parents or pets or whatever it is, it's quite distracting working from home. And I think creative people especially thrive on being part of a team and buzzing off each other and just getting the energy that you only really get in a room. It's not the same on a Zoom call. So I think if anything, they're suffering. And I think a lot of creative people haven't had any of the furloughs, any of the support that other sectors have had, because they fall through the net. They're kind of a sole trader, but their taxes don't really reflect what they're bringing in, and so the amount that's been available to them from the government hasn't really kept up with what they were used to earning before. So I think most people in the creative sector are struggling.
Yeah, and I can definitely agree with that, being a creative myself. So thank you for that. And then Emily, we were on a stag do, weren't we?
Yeah. The most unlikely of meetings, but we did.
We did. We were the only two girls that got invited to the stag do, and we didn't know each other, and we were like, oh, hey. And it was really good in Amsterdam. How many years ago was that? It was like 3 years ago?
I think, yeah, at least actually. Yeah. It must have been 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, it was crazy. And literally, Emily was watching the show last night, and she heard me saying, hey, I've got some more space. Someone had to cancel on this Talkwood. And you volunteered yourself. And I want to say I'm proud of you. And thank you very much for doing that, because tonight's not an easy subject to talk about. And it's something that you were happy to take ownership of, which is the first step of facing anything, is owning it, actually admitting that you have a problem. But we've all had this problem. So I just want to congratulate you on being willing to share this, because that's really powerful. Thank you.
Sure.
And also, just to let people know, this is your second video call. I'm going to tell everybody this. You literally only did a Zoom 2 days ago.
2 days ago, I did my first ever Zoom, and now I'm on a live broadcast. So
I love that, facing a challenge. But the thing is, you live in Ibiza, where I used to live, and you don't really need Zoom that much out there if you're doing what you're doing, which is hairdressing, or it was hairdressing. Yeah. You're more of a face-to-face people person.
Yeah.
And now we have this wonderful, exciting.
I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. And we've also got Xavier Hawke as well. Hi, Xavier, who's one of my friends. He is the owner of Fire On platform, and which I'll be telling a lot more about that. We're going to be having you on, Xavier, to talk about that in full. So just bear that in mind and get back to my message on Telegram, please. So to everyone else, I wanted to be really open, honest and raw on this one, as I am on most of them. I end up crying on most of my Talkwords. I am okay with tears. If anybody else feels awkward, I'm sorry. But usually I find when talking about my truth, tears tend to flow. I get a little bit uncomfortable, but good stuff happens afterwards. So I'm going to go with that flow. And I'm going to bear all and say that COVID, I wasn't earning loads before COVID. I was an entrepreneur and I have been for 7 years. I was just explaining to these guys beforehand. And money has been the bane of my life since I started being an entrepreneur. And before I was an entrepreneur, let's say I was cash rich. I was doing things I probably shouldn't have been doing. I was earning a fair bit of money, keeping myself going and not really owning anything. And then I decided I was going to start a business, which was the best and the worst idea I think I'd ever had combined. Because I knew nothing, even though I liked business at school, I knew nothing about running a business, and I learned and taught myself on the fly. And you only really teach yourself when you make mistakes. So you can imagine how painful that has been over the time. And it's just caught up with me largely, really. I now have, and then none of them at the moment making any profits, but one of them's in R&D, one of them's a brand for myself, and the other one's a fresh business since COVID, since just before COVID. And it's been really hard having my businesses not making any profit, but still having to attend to things like accounts and the yearly accounts and make sure everything's in alignment and face up to the stuff that you're not getting paid from anything, but you're still having to do the work. That's hard. And it's something you want to avoid all the time. But I wanted to talk first and foremost to Remy, because Remy sat in between us two today, and he sorted his finances out, but it hasn't always been this way. It hasn't always been as easy as it is now. I would love to go into a little bit of your vulnerability and basically ask you what it was like before you kind of truly felt like you'd made it and that you'd achieved in some way, and kind of what that looked like for you, and then the transition process to finally figuring that out.
Well, I'd love to give you a very kind of simple, rags to riches before and after story. But I think the truth around money is that it's just never that simple, because we grow up with attitudes towards money, which then stay with us throughout our life. And so whether you think you're rich or you think you're poor has a lot to do with how you were raised and how you value things. Like even your story just now, talking about, where you're at with money, let me ask you, are you happy in the house that you're living in?
As in the one I'm living at my parents at the moment, and it's free, so very happy. Yes.
So you have free accommodation, and it's a nice place to be.
Yeah, and it's a really good place to be.
Right, and you're in the UK at the moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have enough to eat?
I do.
Okay, so I mean, just to reframe that for a second, in terms of the context of the whole world, you're probably in the top 10, 15%. I can't.
Very interesting, yeah.
So, we sometimes have to think about that, because if you live out of a sense of scarcity, then it doesn't matter how much money you have, you'll always be feeling scared. I coach a lot of people who have I don't coach a lot of people who have hundreds of millions. I coach a few people who have hundreds of millions of pounds. And I coach many people who have millions of pounds. And I coach some people who have no money at all. And you wouldn't necessarily know who they were by talking to them, because some people who have a lot of money live with a sense of scarcity, and some people who have very little money live out of a sense of abundance, and it's a mental mindset thing. So to answer your question, I grew up with two parents who had very, very different views on money. My mother grew up in America, so the Second World War didn't really affect her and her family. And they lived with a sense of abundance, huge refrigerators full of food, even though they were middle class. And my dad's family were refugees from Europe. They moved from Berlin to Vienna to Paris. They were in camps before moving to America. And so my dad, I'm lucky both my parents are still alive, hopefully not watching this right now, but my dad had a complete sense of scarcity. So our reality was the same. They were living in the same house at the same time, eating the same food with me growing up. But my dad was living out of a sense of scarcity. So he would cook stews with leftovers, and my mother would order, luxury food by the truckload. So I lived in this very weird place between thinking we were poor and thinking we were not. And there were very stressful times around Christmas where, there'd be all these presents, but I was anxious about them because how could we afford all these presents? And it was a weird place of not knowing whether we had money or didn't have money, whether we were running out or didn't, because they came from such different places, and they still inhabit those two very polar different places. So I have dealt with that by getting better at managing money, knowing how much is coming in and going out. But I kind of started off my life really up until my 30s, kind of being my mother when it came to money, like being generous, living out of abundance, not talking about how much anything cost, sort of thinking like if you had to ask how much something cost and you had to explore that too much, then that was like failure. So I also, so also in my mid 30s, I sold my first business for quite a lot of money, and so had quite a lot of money, but have managed that more from my father's perspective than my mother's, with a sense of like, this may have to last me a long time. I need to manage it. I need to be careful with it. So I didn't have that like sudden moment of like having no money and then having a lot. I always grew up with this weirdly ambivalent sense of what money is, and through coaching many people and also getting the opportunity to travel to different parts of the world, what I've come to appreciate more is a little context around money. Once you travel to places like India and Africa and you see incredibly generous people who have nothing by our standards, 20 people living in a hut who invite you to supper as if they were kings, it really changes your perspective. It certainly changed my perspective. So I now appreciate that even though I may sometimes feel like I am going to run out of money, I don't have enough money, I am like the two of you in a very lucky position because of where I live in the world, and the fact that I have food and the fact that I have shelter, and actually the kind of Jewish refugee story which I carry through my ancestors isn't my story, even though it feels like it is,
Yeah. That's really interesting to separate yourself, like you said, my story, and it isn't really your story, because a lot of people get, really caught up in their story, their family history, and their kind of identification with that, and from what they've taken from their parents. And me as well. Like my parents, they were always really hard workers. My dad was a master of arms in the Navy, and my mom was really high up in the army, and everything was efficient and done, and everything was like on time, and here we are, and everything's got to be done in the straight way. And I grew up like, whoa, no, and just went off and did the exact opposite to that. And I said yesterday, I think this is one reason why Emily's probably sat here. I said yesterday, I'm okay when I'm skint. I'm a happy version of me when I'm skint. I'm okay without money. And when I realized that I'm good skint, it's okay. And I had so many things in my life, and my network's huge. And I've got, I realized that the difference was there was a few other things that I needed to do in order to get the money I wanted to do. So I applied that hard work to myself, which is what I'm going to discuss very shortly. But it was a real ownership at that point where I was just like, oh, so I haven't got money because there's a few other things I haven't been doing, but it doesn't mean I'm not worth it. Doesn't mean that I'm not, able to do it. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with me. It just means that currently it's not my time. And that really helped me shift and be a little bit happier with that part of it. But one of the things that's happening right now is so many people are being asked to question their finances in every way because their job security has gone. And what we've found is job security is gone. You're now working from home. You're questioning your relationship, whether it's the right one, because you're with each other all the time. You're having to look after your kids at the same time. You're questioning your job. Is it secure? Is it actually what I want to do? Do I feel that while the world's going to shit, basically, I can do this job on a daily basis? Probably not. It's asking you to question what you're spending, where you're spending it, why you're spending it. There's so many parts that we're now questioning that's going to make you feel unstable. And especially if you're not willing to own any of those, you're like touching on them a little bit here, a little bit there, but the real ownership comes from oh, that's something I now need to do to address that problem. So seeing it's one thing, and then the other part is, oh, I've got to play with this. That's where the difficulty comes from. So you said you sold your first business, and this is really interesting because I've had a few people when I was living in Ibiza, Emily, I know you'll know a lot of the same people who've bought and sold businesses and done big money deals. And all of them tell me that there was no difference between the day they sold their business and the day after. They felt pretty much the exact same person that they were before. It was just numbers had changed slightly in their bank account. Was that the same feeling for you?
I think so. I mean, it was the end of a chapter, so it was, there was some sense of grief in that chapter having ended, and that perhaps, also you don't sell your business overnight. What happens is there's always an earn out, so that when you sell a business, it's a little bit like selling a house, except when you sell a business, you have to live in the house while the new owners kind of pretend that they're not there and tell you what to do with the furniture. It's a weird thing. But Sigmund Freud, the psychoanalyst, said famously that if he had a choice between a rich patient and a poor patient, he would choose the rich patient any day, because the rich patient already knew that money couldn't solve their problems. And it's really interesting to hear what you were saying about, valuing your life, judging your life just by what's coming in and what's going out. And of course, that is the way we are raised and taught to value success. Success equals money. And it used to be less like that in Europe than in America. And we used to make fun of them for being so materialistic, but it's become more and more a universal benchmark. If you're rich, you're successful. And I really encourage people to look at their life, not just in terms of career and finances. Of course, it's important and it underpins, many important things. However, there is also health and fitness, right? Which we have some control over, and it's very important, because if you have a lot of money, but you're not healthy and fit, that's nothing, right? So health and fitness is hugely important, and it's something we can tend to. Also, personal growth, learning and deepening yourself. That's also something which you may think goes out the window when you don't have any money, but it doesn't necessarily follow that if you have a lot of money, you're tending to personal growth. And then there's your relationships, your most intimate and personal relationships, the people who you love and who love you. And I think I was telling you this when we spoke on the phone before Christmas, Natalie. The luckiest thing that ever happened to me was that in my 30s, I got a terminal illness, and I was told by doctors I wouldn't live 3 months. And having to face that and then live, I mean, the luckiest thing, of course, was living. But it was also being given that diagnosis, because it made me value what was really important. And like you said, it wasn't the money in the bank, and it wasn't the awards. It was the people who I loved and the people who loved me, who luckily were the same people. And so, that's what, so when you look at health and fitness, the people who you love, personal growth, fun, travel and adventure. Like, we haven't had much of that recently either, fun, travel and adventure, but fun, travel and adventure is an important area of your life. Friends and family, apart from your intimate connections, friends and family are important. Your immediate surroundings. So there are all these other areas which are important. And if you, on my website, vitality.guru, I do a Wheel of Life questionnaire, which you can generate your own Wheel of Life to see where you're most satisfied and least satisfied in your life, and where you're in balance. But career and finance is really just one area. And I think the important thing to recognize in trying to have a life that is balanced, a life that is happy, life that's fulfilled, is that is just one area. And it sounds to me, Nat, as though in terms of self-expression, in terms of joy, in terms of abundance, you're doing really well. And to just measure it by how much money you have in the bank or how much money is coming in is to buy into a set of values that I don't think is really your set of values.
Yeah, totally. No, you're right. It was just at the beginning of COVID, I was just about to get where one of my investors, I love him, Gideon, if you're listening, amazing. We had a very difference of opinion when I first met him, and we kind of not struggled. We liked each other, but he had a very, he's a Jewish guy, and he had a number of different businesses. He'd invested in lots of entrepreneurs, and he was set in his ways on how he wanted to really work with different people. And I came along and obviously wanted his help, and he wanted to help me, but he had a set of rules and structures. And I was like, no, I'm done. I'm not going to subscribe to that. So I said no to the initial offering that he gave me. And I think he was like, oh, she said no to me, but she really needs the money. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not going to work for me. And I was really like solid within myself, because I knew what wanted to work for me. I liked him, but it wasn't on my terms. And it wasn't that I was being ungrateful, but I knew never to get into bed with someone unless you were fully happy. And, and I learned that in other areas of my life a little bit too late, unfortunately. But the idea of doing it in business really was like, got to be hard hitting here. And I really took power from walking out and being like, wow, I can't believe I just did that. But I knew that I had my values, and it wasn't that he was encroaching or anything. It was just, it was not quite how I wanted it. And I went away and I struggled a little bit more, and he came back and we resolved the situation. But just before COVID, he was going to put some more money into the business. And unfortunately didn't, because a few things got tight for him with other areas. And it just became one of those things where the deal was just taking off the table. And I lost my team that I had, and I had everything. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And everybody on my team still wants to be on my team now. And we're almost a year later, even though I don't have the money. They're not working with me, but they're like, you know, we want to support you, want to work with you in some way. And each one of them has said to me, you know, I want to stand by you, and we're still here, which showed me that I'd obviously paid them in a different way. I was obviously paying them at the time, but I have no money to pay them now, but they're still there for me. And I realized I'd paid them with way more than money. And I realized who I was. And by not having that money and that investment, although at the time I was crushed and I was thinking, no, this is not what I want. I want something else. You know, you can't fight reality. I ended up out of that deficit and being sat with that, realizing that I had some true friends around me. I actually came home to my mum and dad's, which got me out of London, which thank God. I came home to my parents. I've got a better relationship with my mum than I've ever had. And I found an envelope in my drawer from what I wrote in Ibiza 2 years ago. And I wrote to myself, I will own this. I am owning this radio station. And I'm building it for these reasons. And then I tucked it in an envelope, wrote on the front of it, open it on the 17th of March, 2020, which was in 2018. So when I got back to my parents, I found it on the 18th of March, which is the day after I got home. And I opened it up and I'd written this letter to myself, and I was like, oh, I Am Sound's meant to be a radio station, not something. And it just, everything just clicked. But if I had the money, I wouldn't have had any of these learnings. I wouldn't have got any of this. So for me, I feel like even if I don't have the money right now, I don't have it for a reason. And there's something else that I need to learn and that I need to grow into in order for me to get there. And I'm happy with that journey, which now I can sit back. But if only I was born with that like ultimate knowing that it's coming, I would have, you know, it would have been less stressful. But I wanted to touch into what you said then, because you were saying about the qualities of life. Emily, I know this is, you're thinking, oh God, now it's my turn. But I wanted to say to you, you've lived a very similar life to me. The London lifestyle, the traveling around the world, partying, jumping on a plane whenever you need to, going to all of the weddings and the parties and the raves, and, you know, just living in the moment. And you are now in a position where, you know, and you said to me, you were like, oh God, you know, I'm almost 40 and I'm, you know, I think, which you don't look, by the way, but you're like, I'm almost 40 and I haven't got my finances where I want them to be. And just by saying that, I was so refreshed to hear you say that, because it's an acceptance that, you know, you can do better. And it was like an ownership in it, which I thought was magnificent. But would you really change any of the lifestyle you've had? Because you've lived an epic life.
No, I wouldn't. I know now that I'm actually selling a flat. I had a very, very young investment with a flat when I was 19. I was very lucky. I refused to go to university. I had some insight tell me that I didn't want to go and lose 10 grand on a uni debt. And so I refused to go to university, and I had some inheritance. And my dad said, you know, look, it was education or house. So I'm actually selling my flat, and I know I will have some sort of financial alleviation happening very soon, which I've sort of been counting on, I have to say. But I also know that if I could do this all again without the house, I would still live the life that I have, because what I realize now more than ever is people being reminded to live in the moment, and people being able to be in the now. And ironically, in the last few years, I've actually jumped more out of being in the now and being present than ever before, because I've been up in my head. I've been worrying. I've been panicking. I'm sort of the wrong side of 30. And, you know, and suddenly I'm sort of like, okay, well, I got away with 30 being not quite an adult, but now I'm nearly 40 and I need to sort of, you know, make some sort of statement to myself, some sort of survival kit that without a man, without a family, I have something to show for myself and something to support myself with. But I wouldn't change all of the experiences, because the way that I've come round to the understanding of the money has only been because of having that frivolous, that freedom, that, you know, I've only got 30 quid, but you know what? It's my round, guys. Or I've only got 100 quid, but sod it, I really want to buy this. And that's going to make me happy in this moment. And I'm only going to have 30 quid left, but who cares? Yeah, it might not be the most sensible choice to say I'd do it all again the same way, but my dad once said to me, I wish I could give you the knowledge I know now with the freedom and the body that you have. And that was when I was 15. He was like, if I could have the knowledge and put it into you with the body and freedom and that essence of childlike sort of immaturity, really, he said, I would do that. But actually, you know, the stages that we take, I know that the only reason why I'm selling the house now is probably because any time before it, I'd have been too immature to deal with the money. And it's the first year since everything that's happened with COVID where I'm actually asking for help. And and that's thanks to you as well, Nat. Like, you've been a massive help with your radio station and your podcast through COVID, helping me out of panic attacks you didn't even realise because it was your recorded voice.
Totally oblivious.
Yeah, but even this, you've been fascinating me with this, and the reason why I'm sitting here right now talking live on air is because I do want to take stock, and I am at a point where I've had amazing experiences. I've done the fun. I've shot from the hip my whole life, but now I am ready to have a bit more of a game plan. And it doesn't matter to me that I'm nearly 40, because inside I sort of feel like I've just finished being 29 still. But yeah, it's good, and I'm glad I've had the experience I've had that have got me where I am.
I really appreciate that. And I don't know if there's anything you wanted to say, Remy, or not, whether you were listening to what Emily was saying. I'll let you talk before I jump back in.
I am listening. And one thing that occurs to me is, you know, we are all talking to the voice in our head that is mostly our 25-year-old self. You know, when you talk about being 40, it's with the perspective of a 20-year-old. And one really useful way to get a new perspective is to have a conversation, Emily, with your 65-year-old self, to go into the future a little bit and talk to yourself age 65, and see what she would say, see what advice she would have. It's a way of tapping into a wisdom that you already have, the wisdom that your dad wished you'd had at 15, but that in some way you do have now. And, you know, when I do this with clients, again, it's a guided visualization that you can do on vitality.guru. You go to vitality.guru and I talk you through a process where you get to meet your future self. But when I do it with clients and when I've done it myself, the one thing that always comes through is that your future self will tell you, don't take things so seriously, lighten up and relax, do what you want. You're never going to be as fit and vital and healthy and strong as you are right now. So instead of thinking, you know, you're not 20 anymore, which you're not, or you're not 30 anymore, you're not, think, you know, you're never going to be as fit and vital and energetic and attractive as you are now. So don't sweat the small stuff. And the other thing that occurs to me, and it, you know, occurs to me listening to both of you, is that when you think of money and finances and career as being one segment of the wheel of life, but just one segment, yeah, you may be a little bit out of balance in that area now, and we all are, but it is just one cog of the wheel. And would you rather have it be that wheel than, you know, family? Would you rather have family be out of balance? Would you rather have health and fitness be out of balance? Because the truth is, you know, when you're not alive, it doesn't matter how much money is in your account. So being alive, being free, I mean, we're all free, we have our liberty, having family, these are really important things. And money will take care of itself. I know it sounds glib and trite, but the truth is we can never be fully in balance at any one time. You know, there's never one moment or even 1 week or 1 month when I've just had a great chat with my parents, won an award, got lots of money in the bank, been to the gym, made love with my partner. It just doesn't happen. So you have to look at like a bigger block of time. And I think if you recognize that, like for each of you, you've had a period of your life where you've been having lots of fun, travel and adventure, lots of connection with the people you love. And yeah, money's been a bit out of balance, but that's just one thing. It's just one thing. And now that you're focusing on it, you can take care of it. And I would really encourage both of you to be very clear in what your goals are around money. Because the thing about money is, we tend to define it by what we don't have and by what other people have. Because there's always people who've got more and who are richer and who are doing better. And if you're not really careful, you just think, oh, I'm a failure because I haven't done what they've done. But I would really encourage you to set out for each of you exactly what success in terms of money and finances would look like for you in 2021, and do it forensically. Like, have $2,000 in the bank by the end of April, make $3,000 by doing this job. Have it be very granular, because otherwise you look back on the year and you go, oh, I wasn't very successful, but on whose terms? Because if you're saying, like for me right now where I'm sitting, success would look like having X amount in savings, then that is what success should look like for you. And you need to write it down, because you won't remember it a year from now and you'll think, oh, I've only got X amount in the bank. Whereas in fact, that is what success would have looked like to you 12 months ago. So I think writing down in a very clear way what you would like to have happen and how. I recommend generally to start with like a feeling, to like for each of the things on your list, whether it's fun, travel and adventure, or whether it's money, start with how you want to feel about it. So you might put down under money, I want to feel relaxed and at ease. I want to live out of a sense of abundance. I want to not be stressed about bills. And then under that, put like how you're going to get there. Sell your house. Okay, great. Well, that's a big start. I don't know your lives well enough to fill in the blanks, but you do. So fill in the blanks of how you want to get there, month by month, pound by pound. And it will be very reassuring to you now. And in a year, when you look back at that list, it will be a great way to see that you were successful, because you may not have achieved everything on the list, but you'll have achieved many things. And by the way, you can do exactly the same thing with relationships and everything else. And I feel like I've been talking for ages, but I just want to add one extra thing.
I did invite you to talk, so don't worry. Don't ever feel like you're talking too much on here. It's the idea of it's the essence of a talk show.
But when it comes, when I was talking about having a conversation with your future self, it did also remind me that although it's sometimes a little bit scary to think about death, right? As human beings, if we live till 83, that's still only 1,000 months. So when you think about your life and, being almost 40, well, if we're lucky, we're here for 1,000 months. So you may have 500 months left. You may have 600 months left, but it's still a relatively short amount of time. And when people die, they have 5 main regrets. There was an amazing palliative care nurse called Bronnie Ware. You may have come across her writings. She wrote a book called 5 Regrets of the Dying. And what she discovered was, when she was holding the hands of dying men and women in their last days and weeks and months, what she discovered was there were essentially 5 things that kept on coming up. I wish I'd had more fun, right? I wish I'd spent more time with the people I loved. I wish I'd been truer to my purpose and not lived life according to other people's values. So when you think that, what the main regrets are for most of us, and probably us, it's really our main duty to avoid that so that we don't die with regrets. Because if you know what the regrets are going to be, and you don't want to take that risk, right? So connecting with the people you love, being true to your own purpose. And the 4th regret was, I wish I hadn't spent so much time at work. Because, what older people realize is there's so much more to life, but often they haven't given focus to it until they were 70, and then they're on their deathbed. So these things, so it's important to focus on them. And I'm not discounting money, because money is a lubricant. Money makes the world go round, literally, but it only makes the world go round if you are free and healthy and well.
Very true. Thank you for that. And you didn't talk too long. It's always fine. It's good. It's usually me that's going, I should shut up now and let a guest talk. But I have been known to talk in my life, hence me having a radio station. So I wanted to touch on a few points that you made there. One of the things for me is, so obviously my name's Nat Rich. That's most people know me by Nat Rich. People assume that one is rich and one is not rich. However, I've in my life, I have, let's say, Emily, I think you're going to agree with this, and somebody told me this years ago and it never left my head. I have lived a champagne lifestyle with lemonade money. And it was just so on point. And I was like, oh my God, because I've got to go wherever I wanted to go. I've been invited by amazing people. I am a talker and I do create quite a good energy at a party and get everyone going and have loads of good ideas. And I love playing hostess. I'm not a mum. I would love to have kids at some point, but I am like there with the mothering and making sure everyone's okay. So there's this wealth that has come out of me that helps people to assume that I am, there's endless amounts of whatever it is I'm offering. And it's been my thing where I've been like, oh God, but sometimes I come home and I think, and I've been very quiet about what's happened behind my life. And what I didn't want to do is own that lack of responsibility that I had. And I used to think largely that money and finance was something to do with maths. And it's not really. It's to do with a game. And if you understand the game and you actually understand how you can play the game and what the game is, then you can participate in that game. But I had a real problem with maths when I was a kid, and I used to bury my head in the sand. And I, thank God there were calculators. But even when I had a calculator, I just end up turning it upside down and writing like boobies on it or something. It was never really used appropriately. Everything I had was always kind of pushed away. And I've been very lucky. And this is going to answer one of the questions that Xavier's got on here as well. I was very lucky to have a friend who asked me to do a voiceover for a cryptocurrency 9 years ago. And I was just like, what's a cryptocurrency? Having not realized, I'd already heard about that from one of my Irish friends that was telling me that Bitcoin was a ridiculous price. And it was, it was the cheapest it was ever going to be. And I had to buy it back then and all of this. And I didn't really understand what all that was. But because I was very interested in my friend and what he was saying, we were quite spiritually inclined to look at the world's wealth and the financial systems and the structure of money and how money is not what we think it is. And because there was more of an adventure into money and how it had all been siphoned off in the past, it was very entertaining to me. There was a story around money that, on a global set, that I'd not really understood. So I went on this journey to really learn about money. And it wasn't that I was learning to make it. I was just learning the ways it's created the world and the shifts in power and all that kind of stuff. So it got given a bit more of a meaning to me. And then I was looking into what something like cryptocurrency could do for the world and how, a different transfer of wealth needed to take place in order for us to exist in different ways on the planet. And there's one thing I wanted to say is money may seem like the most uncomfortable subject, but that's the feelings around money is what's uncomfortable. When we actually look into money and we actually look into the system and what it's made of and why it's like it is, it's fascinating. The journey around money and wealth and creation and what you can do with it and where you can go with it has been massively enhanced by the blockchain and cryptocurrencies, which we won't go too much into now. But Xavier wanted to say, Remy, I think this is directed at you, unless, Emily, you're a secret crypto trader and I don't know about it. And you may not have ever dealt with crypto, Remy, either. But having known, what's your thoughts at the moment on that? Have you dipped your toe in at all? Do you understand it at all? Is it something that you welcome, something that you hate?
No. So again, my ideas about these things were shaped quite young, as many of ideas were. So my dad used to look at the newspaper every day to see what the stock market had done, to see where his shares had gone up or down. And I would say that his mood would go up or down accordingly, except it nearly always went down. It seemed like it hardly ever went up. So it wasn't a joyous thing. It was like the paper, in my child's view, it was like things that we had no control over. I had no control over, my parents had no control over, were affecting the mood and the energy of our meal and our day. And he would be down or depressed or angry because of something that happened in the stock market. And so as a result of that, I never invested in anything I couldn't see. And I've only ever invested in property. And, you know, that some people might say that's crazy, and maybe it is. And certainly recently, you know, it's been a weird time to have investment in anything. But yeah, for me, if I can see it and touch it, I feel safe. And if it's in a computer, you know, which blockchain is, I feel very unsafe and unsure. It feels, so the further away it is from something I can touch and feel, the less comfortable I feel.
Yeah. So which is something I never thought I would say, I'm getting myself a wealth coach. And I never had a coach. I've been very good at kind of coaching myself in a number of ways and going in and doing the meditation and really getting the answers from within. But money was this constant cycle. And after doing loads of different courses and different things, one of the things that I realized is no matter how many books I read, there's still a understanding of that sector that scared me, that terrified me, and I never had money to kind of put into it. And I've been very good at understanding things and learning, but I wasn't earning to match what I'd learned. So I wasn't able to put anything in. And anytime I did have money, it went onto one of my businesses, and where I've placed my money and my attention were never the same. So my attention would be on something else, but my money would be in another direction. And I've got somebody starting in February because something's happened with our kind of situation with us being here in Yorkshire. As I said before we got on the call, we're moving down to Devon. And my thing was not wanting to make a move in such an unstable time like this and putting all of our money into another house from the family, putting all our money into another house and not having anything spare. And also not really having the money in a bank. And banks are not stable. They haven't been for a long, long time. And we need to be looking at other ways of making, wealth in other areas, not just in our health and so on, but obviously financially. And something I found very interesting is that I was reading a book the other day, and the guy said, like you just mentioned with the papers, the guy said, if you're looking in the papers or you're looking on the TV to find out how your stocks are doing, you have no idea how the trading market works. That's not where you go to find your information. They're like the general traders. They're like the people who are making money in the second way. The real people who understand money and understand wealth, they don't look at the news. They're making the deals behind. And what they're doing is they're looking at the markets in a different way, not from the public facing view. And they said that's where the real information comes from. And I thought that was quite fascinating, but it's the problem that a lot of people have is when they think they're learning about money, they think, right, I don't even know how to do my cash. I don't even know how to do what's going in and what's going out, let alone how the world's trading and what it works. And when you look at things like crypto, you're like, oh my God, what does that even mean? And it becomes overwhelming and scary. And a lot of people feel stupid. And I've had that conversation with many people where they feel stupid that they don't understand this. So then they put their head in even further into the sand, as opposed to take it out and say, where do I start? How do I do this? Where do I go? So even though I'm getting a wealth coach and he's going to help me learn in gold and silver more, and I used to work on a trading floor, so I know a little bit, but it's like, managing the money that we will have has got to be done carefully. But I want to show you, this is where I geek out, and this is why everybody knows I'm a bit of a personal responsibility coach / geek. I have this. I don't know if you can see it here. It's called Money Awareness. Basically, I created myself a workbook and I geeked out. So my money awareness is something I look at every single day. So, and I made it colorful because I hate finance usually. And I'm like, I don't want to do the boring thing. So I made it colorful. So everything's literally in different colors. So these are all of the businesses I've got with all the shareholdings and who's got what and how much percentage. This is anything I owe out on a monthly basis in each of those companies to make sure I know the date it's going out, what bank account it's going out of, and everything. So I can literally look on one page and I can go, oh, I know where I'm at with that. And in order to create this one beautifully colored page that's, delightful now I look at it, it took me 2 months to create this, because what I had to do was contact HMRC, speak to my accountant, reorganize, go through every single company I was paying money to, find out what the bill date was, then put it onto a spreadsheet. And my resistance to doing that much admin and growing up and facing all of those like phone calls to here and how much do I owe you there, it was the most emotional journey that I had to go through just to get my basics before I can even think about doing anything else and getting a wealth coach. And I wanted to ask you, Remy, is there anything that I mean, obviously I might just be a bit of a geek. There's other things that I've done, which I'll explain later, but is there anything you've done that has really helped you make life easier around money, that you do as maybe a ritual or something that you do on a regular basis, or something that you teach your clients to do to be able to step by step take that accountability?
Well, I think what you've done is great, and having clarity around it is really important, because I think most people tend to think about whether they have a lot or whether they have a little, and it's very relative, whereas actually you have what you have. You have what you have, and knowing what's there and knowing what you owe and knowing what's going in and out is the basis of everything. And I think the problem around money is that it's very emotional. When you look at it on a page, it's very clear. Like you said, X is in the bank, Y is going out, Z is coming in. And these are just numbers, right? But we never reduce it to that, because somehow we grow up with these ideas that money represents so much. So people would almost rather quite often live with a story about money, like I'm running out of money, or I have no money, or I've got so little money, or rather than actually deal with the data. Like, I have £20,000 in the bank and I owe £5,000 and I got 2,000 coming. That makes it very unemotional, right? But that's the fact. So you could talk to 20 people and they would each have a story, and the story does not match. You couldn't match. I could take the sheet that you did, if you'd done that sheet, and the sheets that 20 other people did, and then the stories about the money, and try and match them, and you would have no way of doing that.
No.
One person's going, I'm going to run out of money. One person's got, I've got no money. One person's got, I've got so much money I don't know what to do with. But the numbers are not supporting that. So in the first place, it's really important just to recognize that it's almost like, with weight loss and fitness, like people will obfuscate rather than go, I want to lose 10 pounds by January. They'll go, I want to be thinner, or it's all about calories in, calories out. It's about what you do. So it's exactly the same with money. And the less emotional you can be about it on every level, the better, because human beings make up meaning around everything, and that includes money, but in a big way. And it's very interesting to explore with people, what does it mean? What are you really saying? Because at the end of the day, it's numbers in and out. And if you can get to the place where you're at, which is looking very forensically at what you've got and what you owe, you almost don't, a money coach is great because they'll deal with the mental mindset around money. Why, what is, a lot of people have a negative story about being rich. Like, being rich is bad. It's easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get to heaven, right? So a lot of people carry a lot of religious and societal and cultural baggage around money. And it stops them from attracting it. And that hopefully is what a money coach can do, because it's more about that. It's what's stopping you from playing the game about making money with success. Like, I used to think I couldn't catch a ball because I had a story that I didn't have an eye for the ball. But if someone throws the ball at me, I catch it every time. If you throw a ball at me now, I catch it. But I would tell you I can't catch a ball. And it's a little bit the same with money. So what you've done is great, and you're 10 steps ahead of most people, because you're just looking at it on a ledger. Money is a ledger of what's coming in and what's going out. And there's no drama and there's no mystery, and it's just that. It's always just that.
There's two other things that I did, because I realized that it took me 2 months to get to the one spreadsheet. I'm like, I got a bit of a problem here, and it's probably not what's going in and coming out. I knew what was going out quite a lot of the time as well once I started looking at this, but then I wasn't earning on what was coming in. So it always felt like there was always something going out. So because I have kind of been in and out with I'm going to call myself a bank account whore. And what I mean by that is if a new bank opens up, for some reason, I feel like I need that color card. I need that, even though I've got no money in it. I had Revolut, I had Tide, I had Monzo, I had TransferWise. Even though I had no money, I had this intention that I was going to do good and a new bank account would help me get there. It never did, by the way. But what I did was I've got this, which is kind of a thing. It's double. There's two kind of bits there. But this here is all the different accounts. So they're all of my little trading accounts because I do a little bit of trading and a little bit of crypto here and there. And then there's the bank accounts that I've got for the different businesses because some of my investors wanted different bank. I got Coots with one and Barclays with another and Starling. It all went different places. But then every day, Monday to Friday only, because I have a weekend off, every morning I will look at what is in that account and I will write it down. Even if it's uncomfortable, I literally face my bank every single morning, which is something I used to swerve for months. And then I will go even to the point of what's in my PayPal account, looking at, I only have 2 credit cards. I got rid of all my credit card debt. Then I realized that in order to be able to grow my credit rating, I needed to have some kind of credit. So I had to get myself 2 credit cards, one in the beginning, and it was only a £200 limit. It wasn't thousands of pounds like everyone else gets because I had a poor credit rating. So I had a £200 limit, but it was just enough for me to put some bills on and pay them off every month. And then I was building up my credit rating, but I would always be really close to that 200 and it would make me feel really uncomfortable, or I'd just go over it slightly. So then I'd be getting a late charge and I was just like, oh God. And I didn't sort out the dates that money was going out of the bank at the same time. So there would always be a shortfall because I wasn't looking, even though there was money coming in. So this has really helped me stick to that. And then I got another mini credit card with like £600 on from Amazon, which again, I've been very close to the top on, but it's that I don't need any more than that. And I'm now comfortable to look at it every day because I do. And then I look on the price of gold every day, and I look at the price of silver, and I look at how much I've got in my Coinbase account, which is my cryptocurrencies. And looking at that every day has allowed me to minimize, and I'm going to say a percentage here, and I genuinely mean this, by about 90% of all the crap that I used to have in my head around money has gone because I'm able to look at this every single morning when I'm having my eggs or just after when I'm having my tea. It's like a ritual. And one thing that I thought, right, well, I'm doing it in the morning, but I need to make sure that I'm doing for the rest of the day. If I can be this good with money, what am I doing in the rest of my life that will allow me to kind of pick it up on an earning it? Because even when I have jobs come in, and I do, it's very strange because I used to believe from a work ethic, you have to work really hard. You know, my parents were always really hard workers, and I was always thinking, oh, I have to work harder and harder. I now get paid for my voice, and I do voice work and I do meditations, which for me was a struggle for a while because I was thinking, is that it? I get paid to just be me, really? Like, and I couldn't get that in my head that I was enough and that I was actually okay with that, getting paid for just being me, because I was so far removed from being enough. And I think that's a lot of people's problems is sometimes, Emily, I know you've hardly spoken for the last 20 minutes, so sorry about that. I'm apologizing now. But being a hairdresser, I think you'll notice this as well with other people and with yourself. Putting your prices out, knowing your worth has maybe, yeah, you're like, no. Has that been a problem for you in the past, putting a price on your own head for your own service?
Me, yeah. I still struggle with it to this day because and there tends to be this odd pattern of me being tested, which is the minute I get the confidence to start rolling out prices, someone questions it, and then I'm back to where I was, and I'm like, oh God, this isn't my work. I'm not worth this much. Why did I even think I should put my prices up? Oh my God. And yet I've got all of these people that know me, love me, invest in my work because they know the passion I put towards it and little USPs that I have that I know other hairdressers don't. And just what I've been working towards for the last 10, 12 years, which is being earth and scout.
Oh, cut out a little bit then.
And my one thing is...
Sorry, Emily, it just cut out slightly then. Do you just want to repeat that last bit because it just cut out?
Yeah, I was sort of saying it's been a real battle with the prices, because for me, my value is something that you can't necessarily see immediately, and it won't even be hairdressing. And I won't go into it too much, but I'm actually looking at either remodeling or completely changing what I'm doing, because I'm not being fed enough with regards to the love that I have and the way that I deliver my passion. The vessel is hairdressing, but the passion could go down any route. You know, I look at someone like yourself, who is literally just a sounding board and a voice for people like myself, and I admire you, and I sort of go, oh, could I do radio? Or I'll
I think you could.
Always been told I had a voice for radio. Not sure what that means, but anyway. You know, there's lots of different things, but yes, I have inherently found it excruciatingly painful to set prices. And what I realized, quite like your banking, the way that you've just looked at it, and you're like, you know what was a complete headache for me, when it's laid out and it's there and it's in black and white, or in your case, beautiful rainbow colors, it's there, it's black and white, it's done. There's nothing changing that. You just acknowledge it. And I think for me, when I send a text and I set someone up with an appointment, and I give them my professional text, and it's not sloppy and it's not half-hearted, it is how I want to be seen as a professional, and it's how I want to deliver to them, so they feel safe, secure, and like they're being held by their hairdresser and not just, you know, sort of willy-nilly. I will give them prices, and I will be really assertive, and they accept them, and they're really grateful. And, you know, we move off the subject of money very quickly. But when I try and avoid it, and I wait till the point at which I'm actually doing their hair, or I'm completing it and I'm doing finishing touches, I've then got to drop that, to me, that bomb. And I'm absolutely, you know, embarrassed. I'm contorting. And it's actually at that point, because I've left it to that last minute, where I realize I'm now being weighed up in front of this person rather than having the value already set. So yes, it's still very much a learning curve. And with quite a lot of things that I have in my life, I kind of know the answer. It's just implementing them that I find so difficult. You know, and having these sort of mentoring between the two of you, where I'm listening and I'm taking notes on everything. I'm like, wow, God. Like you said, I mean, the headache goes away the minute you have clarity, and the minute you just see it, even though it's there and I don't want to look at it. If I just put it on paper, you know, with regards to checking my bank accounts, it would be so much easier. So yeah, I'm taking notes on that with regards to setting prices, because I think it would be much easier for me if I just delivered that price at the very beginning and I just said it how it was. And actually, if they weren't prepared to accept that price, then maybe they're not the client for me, rather than me feeling like I'm inadequate as a hairdresser.
Yeah.
Just one thought, Emily, that's really helpful, I think, when you're a sole trader or you're selling yourself effectively, you know, when it's you that you're selling rather than a product that is detached. When we're charging out for ourselves, we often feel attached to it, right? So what you're talking about is feeling that your self-worth is involved in the number. So when you say a number and it seems like a high number, it's like, I'm not worth it. And one way to just, it's a trick really, but if you imagine that you are the CEO of your company, right? You're the, I don't know, you're the owner of the salon. And you're charging Emily's services out. You think about her in the third person. So you don't say, this is what Emily charges for a haircut. But when you're saying it, that's what you think. You're thinking about, you're running a business, and one of your resources in your business, perhaps the biggest resource in your business, is Emily. And Emily charges X amount for a haircut. Now you'll say, I charge, but think about Emily. So when you're saying I, don't think about me and I, think about Emily, our stylist Emily. And you say I in that way, because we all know that if you were charging out Nat, you'd have no problem saying Nat charges £20,000. You know, Remy charges.
I wish. Can I?
Yeah. It's just when we talk about ourselves. And so sometimes it's just helpful when you're talking about yourself to think about someone else and to not be attached, because your 65-year-old self would say, don't take it so seriously. Just say, this is the cost of a haircut, and say it with lightness and say it with joy. And like you say, some people will go, I can't afford that, and that's okay. And most people will be fine about it, because you're so right. Everyone picks up on the energy that you put out. It all starts and ends with you. So if you're uncomfortable with what you're charging, people will be uncomfortable. And if you're comfortable about it because you're not attached, it just is what it is, they'll be comfortable with it too.
Yeah.
How do you feel now you've got that bit of tidbits of advice there?
And I know it's true. And I think, when I set the price at the beginning, I'm being very forthright, I'm being very assertive, I'm feeling very comfortable that I know what I give. And you're right, quite often there is no questioning of it. And if there is a question, they're wanting me to break maybe the price down of the total service. And once I do, they sort of really understand, because I endeavor to use non-toxic products. And with being in Ibiza and being a hairdresser originally back in the UK, I'm still attempting to ship everything over. So I have costs that I have to incur that might not be the same if I was just supplying products from the island. But because I choose to work the way I do, I have to set a precedent on that price. And it's something that I am feeling much more comfortable. And as you say, the energy behind it, it's exactly that. And I know that I'm a bit of an empath. So what I do is I absorb the energy of what happens if they can't afford to pay that. And I sort of put that on them before they've even needed that sort of recognition, or even needed that attempt to lower the price for them. It's odd. It's almost like I go in with, I can discount, and it kind of gives them this this leeway to push me down. And then suddenly I'm angry and resentful that actually I'm not getting my worth. So no, you're right. It is all energy related, and I know it's my energy, and therefore the good thing is I'm in control of that.
Indeed. I love that honesty. So I wanted to kind of cover one kind of last subject. And before Remy, I don't know what you're like in terms of time. Have you got time for me to just cover this last point?
Of course.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. So this is a relationship to money, that this is a part of money where I feel is the most awkward. And this is owing money. And it's something that I have basically very much done in the past, where I've borrowed money or there's been money exchange in some way. I've either been owed quite a lot of money, or I've either been owed quite a lot of money, or I've owed quite a lot of money, or little bits here and there. And I've done the whole ostrich thing by, putting my head in the sand, arse in the air, and it's never really worked out. And it's a really tough point, because people fall out over money. You really get to see who people are in relationship to money. If you don't speak up about it, and you don't admit that it's not that you don't admit that you owe it, but if you don't address it often enough to make the other person feel comfortable with you owing them money, you make them feel like they can't trust you. So then it plays on their mind, and then it becomes a real battle of kind of confrontation. And I've had experiences where in the past I've owed money. Still now, there's still money that I owe out now, and I'm very hands up. That's me. I'm not the only one. And what's managing my debt has been one of the biggest struggles because I've avoided moving forward, and because I'm so scared to look at what I owed in the past, even if I write an entire spreadsheet and have a workbook, moving forward without looking back is extremely difficult when it comes to money. And what I realized is that whenever I would be willing to look at all of my finances, and I would clear out the house, and I would be like, right, I'll look at everything, and I look at it, I make this kind of announcement to the universe that I'm ready to take responsibility, and I'm growing up, and I'm moving forward. And the universe is like, really? Brilliant. And brings in something I've forgotten about, or something that's so embarrassing to have to face. And I'm like, oh God. And then it's like a test of, are you really ready? Okay, let's see how you handle this curveball. And it's like, really, it breaks my little heart when I'm like, oh, I thought I was doing so well. And what I realized was, we get tested on our vulnerabilities and our weaknesses. So whenever we're getting tested, it's because we're weak in that area, and we need to stand up create a better boundary, be more honest, be better at our communication. There's something that we need to learn in that area where we might think the whole world is against us, but I call bullshit on the whole world being against one person unless your name's Donald Trump. That's never happened to anyone. Literally, you are there with a responsibility and a universe reflecting back to you going, hi, this is what you need to work on. And the struggle for me has been because I've allowed it to feel, for myself to feel like if I owe someone money, I'm not good enough. And it has nothing to do with my worth. And I know that now. But if I've let someone down, I was a massive people pleaser. And I want everyone around me to love me and to be happy. And I want to love them. And I don't want there to be any confrontation. So if they don't trust me in some way, or if they've got something else going on, it can really affect me. And one of the things that I found that as I'm being more confident with my money, as I'm facing things more, obviously stuff's coming up. But what I realized is other people's stuff comes up too. So even if you owe money to someone and you can't afford to give it them back for whatever reason, or there's whatever's going on, you're going to get their fears and their annoyances and their story coming into your story, and you're going to co-create. And it's really awkward. And this is where the communication needs to be dealt with. And what I did, but just as COVID hit, is I put, ironically, even though I'm not loaded, I know how to communicate. That's what I do. And I was like, okay, I'm going to put this communication workshop together and this look at money. And I pulled on all of the things that I hate around money, and I created a little workshop out of it. And I said to my friend, can you gather some of your friends and I'll gather some of mine, and I want to put this workshop together, and I want to tell you what I've learned about money. And what I realized is no matter how much each one of those person, like how much they had in the bank, some had like 150,000, some had a couple of thousand, some had nothing, some owed money. Everyone was learning something from me. And I was like, oh, and I realized that I'd learned something and I could teach something, and money, even though I didn't really have any at the time, had nothing to do with who I was as a person, because they were still taking value from me. And I want to ask you, Remy, with your clients, do you ever have a confrontation, or do they have a confrontation or express anything, because obviously they're in business and that, you know, that you're coaching them? Do you find, or what percentage would you put on their money worries or their fears around that affects their actual life and their business? Like, how deep does it go if they've got debt? You know, is that one of the biggest factors, or is that just me and my life?
No, it's everybody. So I usually get all my clients to do a wheel of life, which they fill in themselves. And like I said, one section is money. And when people rate their satisfaction, they rate it in every area. And although I know that I'm coaching the top 5% wealth-wise in the world, when it comes to money, people score that in the lowest level of satisfaction. They're least satisfied when it comes to money. And I mean, you know, doing daily affirmations is really important. But look, I just want to loop back to something that you said, because it's quite layered and complex. And I think one of the things you're talking about is the conversation that we have with ourselves in our head about money, and everything else too, but money in particular now. And it's really important to recognize that the person you're having that conversation with is not you. It's mostly your saboteur. Your saboteur is the voice in your head that is designed to protect you in evolutionary terms from being eaten by a lion, falling down a precipice, right? But the voice in your head always says, don't do that. You've done it before and it didn't work. Don't do that. You tried it and you looked foolish. Don't do that. You didn't pay the last person back. So they come from a good place. It's important to recognize they really do. They're trying to protect you, but they stop you from moving forward. They stop you from taking risks. They stop you from failing. And the truth is, with anything, in order to succeed, you have to try multiple times and fail. You have to. If you stop doing everything that you failed once before, you wouldn't be able to do anything. You know, it's a miracle that any of us can ride a bike, because when we were kids, we fell off 25,000 times before we could ride it. But we kept on doing it until we got better. And it's exactly the same with money. It's the same with business. If you look at anybody who has a successful business, there were 10 unsuccessful ones that failed, which they learned from, but then got back up and tried again. So a lot of what you're talking about when it comes to the past, when it comes to debt, when it comes to borrowing money, is the conversation that you are having in your head with your saboteur. And it's really important that you deal with that. And you'll never get rid of the saboteur. The saboteur is going to always be there. I think of my saboteur as like a stowaway. They're a stowaway on my ship. But you can't let them in the captain's house, because if they're steering the ship, you'll just go round and round in circles. They will never get you anywhere. So it's important to recognize they will mostly stow along, but you have to work on ways to make them less powerful. And one really great way to do it is to find somebody who is another voice in your head when it comes, let's say, just for money. So like, do each of you know somebody who is great with money? They don't have stories about money. They just treat it like numbers. They treat it like a game. They succeed and they fail. It's not about whether they're rich. It's just that they are sorted and balanced and grounded and resourceful when it comes to money. You know someone, Nat?
Yeah.
Do you know someone, Emily?
Yeah, I'd like to think I did. I was going to say my father, but I think he still has money issues. But yeah, I do.
It's not about having money issues. It's about that they're in an okay place with it in their mindset. They don't get stressed and upset and anxious around money. But look, you don't have to actually know someone. You can channel someone from fiction. You can channel someone from history. You can channel somebody from politics, from the news. It could be somebody, could be Richard Branson, for all I care. But what's important is that you bring Richard Branson onto your team as your money person. And when you are facing a question about money, you don't go to your voice in your head, because that's not going to be helpful, I promise you. You go, Richard Branson, what should I do? And you will have an instant answer. You will know immediately what that person who is your money guru will say. Because it's very simple. Like with me, it's my grandmother. Like, not that she had a lot of money, but she was really grounded about money. She studied accountancy. She was really good with money. She'd go, don't do it, or do it. But it was really, I always know what she'll say. I always know.
Yeah.
So don't listen to the saboteur in your head. Listen to your go-to money person. And I would encourage you to have like a team member for every area that you care about. Yeah. Whether it's, dating, fitness, because you don't want to listen to the voice in your head because they're saying, oh, don't bother. Don't bother, Emily. You're almost 40. Why even bother? Right? Whereas your fitness guru, your dating guru, your money guru, they're like, they know exactly what to tell you.
Yeah. There's a really interesting book. What was it? Not Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which I love. I've got the board game by that, the cash flow board game, which is quite interesting. There was another book, Napoleon Hill. I forgot what the original, and he talks about the council in his head. And basically when I realized, so I'm telepathic, and I used to have quite a lot of, let's say, extraordinary conversations with people that I did, had died, which is a whole other story. But before this happened, I was tapping into something, and I was able to, in my head, when I read this book, I imagined I went to go and have a really vulnerable, one of my first biggest vulnerable conversations. I went to go and have this vulnerable conversation with someone. And before I went in the taxi, and I was in Dubai, and this little team of people, and I had Simon Cowell, I had Richard Branson, which is ironic that you just said that. I had a friend of mine, Quintin, that I knew that was in the music industry at the time. So it was all related to music and DJing and stuff that I went to. I had my friend who was my manager at the time, Pete Gooding, who's now was one of my business partners. And I had these four in my head. And I literally went to the table in my head, and I'm just like, right, guys, I really need your help. They weren't sat at the table yet. I was just literally, I need your help. What can I do? Each one of them literally came up to the table in their personality, with their whole personality, with the way that they walk, the way that they talk, they sat down. They were so real in my mind. I was shocked, and I was like, this actually works. And I've had many council roundtable events in my head about all sorts of subjects. And I swear to God, this is one of the reasons why I've never had a therapist. And I'm not saying there's anything bad about having a therapist. It's just when I ask myself a question, someone will answer, and I have these conversations on all the time, and I have them in the mirror as well, as a version of myself I can talk to in the mirror. She is on point. She tells me off. One of the first times I ever spoke to her, she came to me and I was waiting for a text message from a guy, and I'd sent this really what I thought was a good text message, and I looked in the mirror, and I remember being sat there and I was naked, don't ask why, but I was naked in the mirror, just like, what am I going to do? And literally she's like, would you reply to that text message? And I'm like, I don't know. And she's like, well, read it again. And I read my text message again. And I'm like, I sound like the biggest bitch on the planet. She's like, rewrite the text message and write this. So I was literally sat there having this like mini breakdown, being like, oh my God, I hate myself. Rewrote the text message, sent it. And he literally within 3 minutes, I'd got a message back and I got the response that I wanted, because she knew, even though I didn't want to hear that I was an absolute bitch, I was. And I needed some other part of me to tell me what I was doing wrong. And I took the advice. And from that day forth, I swear to God, the people in my head and that version of me have saved me a lot of money from having a therapist, and got me out of and into, I might add, some of the most amazing situations in every area. And people say, how do you know all this stuff now? And I'm like, I don't know. And I read, but I literally have those conversations. So please, if anybody's got this is such good advice. What you said as well, Remy, is that talking to that part of you. And I call my ego, I've got a name for my saboteur. She's called Belle. So she's a bellend sometimes, but she's also beautiful. So we call her Belle. And I have a conversation with her, and she is on fire. And I know when she's playing games. And it's that I've made it fun. I've given it a name. I've given my spreadsheets, a rainbow color. I've just tried to bring to life all the parts of my life that I've felt uncomfortable with, because we have to face them regardless of whether we want to or not. This year, and I will say it on every show every night, and I want people to remember this, the rug that we used to sweep everything under has done one, and it's like the Aladdin carpet, it's gone, and we are now left with everything that we tried to put under that rug, and it's going to pop out over the next 2 to 3 years. It's going to come flying back at you. So we need to get really good at dealing with facing ourselves and being honest with that. Did you want to add anything more, guys? Because I think I've done my 4 points kind of that I wanted to go over. Was there anything you would like to add or share on this?
I would love to ask Remy what his recommendation would be for me, basically about to be in possession of a lot of money after never having any money. And I have absolutely no idea where to start.
Amazing question.
I feel, you just said money mentor, you said a finance mentor. I'm like, is there someone that can give me advice without me feeling that I am getting stabbed in the back? Are they going to push me down a road that I don't know? You made a very valid point about cryptocurrency, which would be very on point with my father, which is if you can't see it, don't trust it, which is why he very cleverly, when I didn't want to put my inheritance money into education, told me to put it into bricks and mortar. And I am so thankful to him, because it's about to save me and give me some freedom. But what I don't want to do is walk into a situation and treat it like nouveau riche, where I just go, great, let's just get on and, let's get the champagne out. I am so determined to be a grown-up with my money, but I have no idea where to start. And if there was any pointers or things that I could research.
Well, let's see how the exercise goes. So have you thought of somebody other than your dad, or is it your dad who would be the go-to person? Like, who is your team member now when it comes to dealing with money? We know you're not going to listen to the voice in Emily's head, but is there someone who's your go-to money person in your head that you can channel without needing to call them because you know what they'd say?
There are a few friends who I have a lot of respect for, who have either, one of them worked for Goldman Sachs, and then he's got loads
just pick one. Just pick in your mind, pick one. And now go to that person. I will tell you my advice in a moment, but go to that person in your mind, channel them, and what would they say to do with your money, Emily? Quick, don't think about it too much.
I would feel like they would say for me to spread the money and invest it into different areas, and make sure that I kept a little pot for myself where I actually felt the sense of freedom I've never felt in my life before, where I can have treatments and, you know, I have acupuncture and things like that. I do my own little SOS team that I have slowly built with the help of, you know, Corona. And I would like to be able to utilize that. I'd like a dog trainer for my dog because he's year and a half. There are little things that I would love to delve into a pot. And I think the person that I'm thinking of is one of my best friends. He moved to Hong Kong, and I've actually had a conversation with him because we were talking about Bitcoin, interestingly, about 6 months ago. But I was very skeptical, even though I trust him implicitly. And he comes from a very, very similar initial background to me. He is slick to the point of ridiculous. He's Korean, and he is amazing. He's as immaculately dressed as he is with his finances, and I really, really respect him.
You've got your answer, I think.
Yeah,
I am here. Don't worry.
No, it's all right. Don't worry. I have people go to the toilet, go get a cup of tea. Don't worry about it. It's fine. I've been left hanging in conversations plenty of times, but you actually sound like you've just channeled your perfect answer.
Yeah,
I think that's right. And you know, what I would advise you to do, and what I'm sure they would say, is like, be clear about your priorities, which you clearly are. You know, you want a little pot of money for you, but you want to spread the rest. And then go and see a financial advisor. Go and see somebody who is a professional financial advisor who has no baggage, no stories, no emotions around it. And they tend to be quite cautious people, these people. But that's no bad thing. And they'll tell you what to do to keep it safe. Because I think, you know, there are always people who will say you can, you know, make 10 times your money by investing in this scheme or that scheme or Bitcoin. And if you want to take those risks, then, you know, that's fine. But if you just want to be safe and, which I do, then go to a prudent, established financial advisor, tell them your priorities, and they will help set you up. I remember having a conversation with a financial advisor myself when I was in my early 30s, and, you know, it was quite horrifying, but actually I'm very grateful I had it. They basically said to me, look, we have to plan as if you're going to live to 105. And I said to them, you must be joking. I mean, I just nearly died. I mean, I'm lucky to be here, but I certainly don't think I'm going to be around to 105. They said, well, we have to plan that you might be around to 105 because otherwise you could sue me and you might be eating dog food for the last 20 years of your life. So we did a financial plan from then, which was, you know, 35 to 105, 70 years. And it was very cautious and very prudent, but I'm grateful that we did it, because otherwise, like you, or like Natalie without her lists, you know, I would have been living like without the maths. And money is just numbers. So, you know, if you spend £150 a week on food, you multiply that by 52 weeks, and then you multiply that by 100 years. You know, you just have to, everything is a number. So go through it with a good financial planner. They'll generally charge you about £3,000 for that consultancy, and it's well worth it. Happy to give you a number of someone I use, and just go through it like an exercise and then feel secure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great advice.
So I wanted to say, Emily, I'm going to talk to you after the show. I've got some things to chat to you about, but I wanted to say, Remy, thank you so much. This is your first, this is not your last, this is your first show with us. And I've loved having you. So thank you so much for giving me your time. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed speaking to both of you. Good. And I forgot what date it is exactly, but it's the LGBTQ show and all in between. I've got my friend Steph coming on that's talking about the transition. It's just there's a number of things in that subject, and I thought you'd be fabulous to have on for that. I forgot what the date it is, but you will be back, and I'm hoping for more. I look forward to it. Amazing. And there's more subjects, because I've agreed to go toe to toe with Boris, so we're going to be on every night basically until lockdown's over. So I'm not doing anything else. So there'll be plenty more plenty more. So just to let you guys know as well, if you haven't already subscribed, please do so. I'm almost at 500 subscribers on my personal channel, and I'm like creeping up with my I Am Sound one, which I'm very happy about. We also have the radio show, so underneath you'll be able to, or if you go to I Am Sound Radio on the App Store, you'll be able to get that app there. And we'll also have the Roku TV channel, which will be up in a couple of weeks with all of the content on there. So you'll be able to find us on the smart TV, and we're kind of defining some content. There is actually, a lot of you have mentioned crypto in the chat. There will actually be a whole series that I'm kind of co-producing on cryptocurrencies, the importance of them and why they are basically the future. There is a reason that JP Morgan have put millions and millions of pounds in them while telling everybody else that they're rubbish. There's a secret behind there, and that we'll be going into a lot of subjects around that. So there'll be a whole host of different crypto companies and people that I know from that industry that will be coming on to explain it and making it simpler. And yeah, I think that's it. If anybody wants to reach out to you, Remy, I think I put your links underneath. I'm sure I did. So please just go there in the description below. And then Emily, if you want, have you got an Instagram or a Facebook, or if anyone wants their hair done or wants to chat to Emily about her performance this evening, it was great. Thank you very much for joining us. Where can they find you, Emily?
They can contact me on Instagram, although I'm working on the fact that I don't actually brand myself via that vessel. I'm like you, I'm sort of, well, the social media is very minimal for me.
Yeah.
But yes, I can be contacted via Instagram.
Amazing. Okay, well guys, thank you very much. We will be back tomorrow night. It's Where's Your Head At? It's talking, we're basically having a Saturday night little party. We're talking about alcohol and what we're doing without it at the moment, because there's a few of the guests that are sober. So if you fancy joining tomorrow evening and you're not doing anything, please do so. Thank you so much for tuning in. For everybody at Waterbear, we love you all. Keep tuning in. We hope that you are feeling good and creative and keeping those creative juices flowing. And if you haven't watched this live, you can still reach out to any of us. Go to iamsoundacademy.com and we will be there, you know, to talk to you if you want to reach out with anything. I'm wondering if there's anything else I've missed. Oh, thegreatconnectionfestival.com. Go to thegreatconnectionfestival.com and check out. We've got that's going on the 31st of January. And I'm going to be doing a little piece on there as well. If you're feeling a little bit under the weather and you're a bit down about what's going on, that'll be a great day for you to join in. So I'm not sure if Remy's coming back for the departure of the call. I don't know. Are you there, Remy? No, I don't think he is. So I'll let everybody else go and then we'll be on behind the scenes. But Emily, stay where you are, and everyone else, see you tomorrow.